I'm not here. There I am. Hi, everybody. Hi, Nicole here, and I have my coworker in the background. So say hello to coworker Kyle. Um, am I all put together here? I think so. Friends, I'm so excited to talk to you about today's topic. Partly because anybody else here feeling the pressure? I'm certainly feeling the pressure of some big goals this year, and I just want to have an honest conversation about what are you guys feeling and how are you dealing with that? And I'd love to know in the comments. So first, tell me if you're here with me in the comments. Please let me know that you're here and you're watching. And then, if you know what that pressure and that pressure feels like, right? I'm not calling it stress because I have an opinion about entrepreneurship and stress. Hey, Kristen, so glad you're here. Thank you so much. Hi. Are you at your desk, Kristen? Are you avoiding a meeting? Am I helping being that avoiding a meeting maybe? So glad you're here. Thank you so much. Everybody, let me know if you're here while I pull up. I like to give a little quote of the day before we talk about pressure at work. I want to tell you something that's in front of my desk that I've been thinking about. And yeah, comment if you want to say hi to Kyle in the background as he talks louder and louder. That's okay. So here's what I have for you to consider today. This one. Never stop learning because life never stops teaching. That good one. I'm not going to try to pronounce the guy's name. I'll add it in there if you want to use it and quote him, but never stop learning because life never stops teaching. Good. No pressure ever. We're entrepreneurs. We don't have pressure. Exactly. So I want to talk about that. It came up in an episode of the podcast that we recorded recently, which conveniently is live today. Planned, not planned, maybe, except that it's just been on our mind. And the team, when a podcast episode gets published, we're all just paying a little more attention to it, right? Not just because we're like editing and mixing and making it sound just right, but because the words are just repeated and echoed and we're just hearing it really, really clear. And one of the things that happened when we interviewed this guy weeks ago was he brought up how entrepreneurs feel that pressure and how to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I mentioned that probably last week. But here's what was said in part of the conversation and why I'd love for you to go listen to the rest of it for sure, especially because he and I kind of geek out on a few things. So I want you to hear that. It might inspire your marketing. But I want you to hear kind of what I said to him, which was entrepreneurs, just like how Kristen said it. Yes, exactly. What pressure, Rachel? Entrepreneurs, we choose this life, right? Maybe some of you might be like, I was kind of pushed into it, nudged, pressured by the world around me for whatever reason. But we choose it and we keep choosing it as we show up. And I think it's because we're probably made of something that's used to being in some sort of pressure. Maybe it's how we grew up. Maybe it's corporate life. Maybe it is relationships. But like we kind of choose this because we're used to feeling that pressure of like, it's got to be done this way. I know there's a better way. There's something that I can do about it, right? Maybe it's a little control freak in all of us, maybe a little bit. I'm not ashamed to say it. I like it the way I like it, the way I like it. My business is, I'll compare it to oatmeal. You like it the way you like it, the way you like it. So when it comes to when someone says, do you think entrepreneurs are stressed, Nicole? I have said time and time again to people, I think it's a state of being. And I think it's really important for entrepreneurs and their teams, if I can speak to my team as well, that we get comfortable feeling it. And how to just do that? Oh, it's like flip a switch. Maybe that's sometimes how I make it look like I can just flip a switch, but instead I'm going to share with you a couple ideas. But not so much instead of flipping a switch, I want you to figure out how can you see it and then settle into it, because that's what it is for me. I think that growing up around entrepreneurs, I've been able to figure out how to settle in maybe a little faster with that pressure, but it doesn't mean it's not there, right? Doesn't mean like you don't feel it in a few different places, right? Just feel it. How many, when you get stressed or you feel the pressure, it shows up like in your physical body somewhere? Headaches, migraines, anybody? Neck ache, backache, right? Sleep maybe changes. So it's so important that we recognize it and figure out how can we get comfortable? How can we just settle in, right? Mine shows up a few different ways. And nobody has ever called me a control freak. Definitely not my husband or therapist. I love that, Rachel. I love it. Or Kristen. I love it. That's a good one. Yeah. Shows up in your shoulders and your lower back for Rachel. Yeah. So my spine, my head has hit a windshield when I was 13. So let me tell you, when your head hits a windshield and you have a nice nasty gash from that, you really realize how all vertebrae are all connected and how maybe you might feel it in your lower back, but it's because it's coming up, right? So I can feel something in one place and knowing like, oh man, it's going to travel up or it's going to travel down, and how it I compensate then with my hips or how I stand or things like that. Yeah. So tears, zits, insomnia. Yeah, those are other ways that it can show up. And if we choose this life, I think it's really important then we figure out how do we sit and settle and be like, stress, I see you, but it's not going to show up in my face. And it's not going to show up here. It may, I'm not going to, this isn't, if this was me bottling up like the perfect pill for entrepreneurs, I could probably make a few bucks off of that, but no, it's not gonna be that. But I want everybody to like be able to look at it, acknowledge it, and these are not the tips, but I want you to be able to feel like, okay, yeah, because here is the spoiler. Whatever you're feeling today and pressure of like hitting a really big goal, right? I have some big goals. My entire team, we want to run after some cool stuff this year. Running after that and it not fast happening as fast as we want it, that pressure is going to feel awfully similar to when we're in the thick of it and we're making it happen, right? Who gets that? Who gets that right now that you're like, oh yeah, we're always going to be in this state of like running after it, right? Like we want more or we want to complete it or we want it done. And that feeling right now of pressure, right? Of like, okay, we're not there yet, is going to feel similar when we're like in it and we're making it happen and we're hitting all those goals and like we're there, right? This is about that journey and you're going to feel it now and you're going to feel it there. So how can you just deal with both? Okay. So how many of you know, or how many of you have ever Googled how you deal with some stress or pressure? If you haven't, I saved you some time. I decided to look up what in the world is Google telling us? So they said a few things. I didn't go do like a deep dive, but have you ever looked it up? So here's some things that they say to do. Number one, track your stressors. Track your stressors. I don't need help tracking them. Thank you, Google. But okay. All right. That's a tip. Okay. Then they told me, relax. Try to relax. How many of you have ever been able to say, yeah, like your 5 minutes relax between the high, great stuff and the craze of the other? Yeah. Yeah. Google says to breathe. I love it. So when it said relax, you might see like my little note, like it's a little ha. I think relax, like, oh, just relax is also the equivalent of when you tell a woman, I'm gonna say a woman, that's my experience of this line. If anyone were to say to a woman, just calm down. Oh, bad idea. Death wish, maybe? I think so. So when I saw Google say that, like, just try to relax, I don't think that's helpful when you're like in the thick of it and you're trying to run off that big sales goal, or you're trying to run after a new product that you're trying to get off the ground and sell, but like you haven't tested all the things, you don't know where to go with it just yet, and you're like, oh, maybe if I just relax, it'll come to me. No, you're probably thinking, how do I make it work? So the other thing that it said take some time to recharge. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I like the idea of recharging, but I like the idea of recharging when I feel like I did it, right? So what Google had to sell me, I'm not into it. So I have a few other things. And Kristen said she made breathe your word. Oh, really? Your word of the year last year. It helps sometimes when I remember. But hey, relax. No, it's just not quite it for me. So let me talk through what has worked for me in the past about dealing with some pressures, and what maybe I've seen through different team members over the years, not just even my current team. Although we feel the pressure here right now. I've joked with all of you with a good joke that Rachel gave us that we're like a football team at the end of the season. We've got some people out on surgery and injury, and then distracted with a couple big life changes. One of our girls. So I know these have also possibly worked for them, even though I haven't been like, this is my 3-step method. But I've also seen it happen with my friends I worked with in corporate too. So the first one that Google did not, maybe Google would give me somewhere, is can you talk it out loud? I personally am a verbal processor. That's true. But I'm talking about, is there somebody in your workplace that is not like your exact human that has to help you get things forward? Oh yeah, I broke my nail today. That's great. Anyway, is there somebody you can talk to that would help you see it from a different perspective, right? I remember one really, really stressed out team member of mine when I worked back in corporate. Actually, many of them were. Let's be real, and feeling some imaginary pressures. She would just work late at night. I mean, she lived in the city, so it's easier for her to pop home, 20 minutes later. But she would keep working till like 8 p.m. or like had to get it right, like had to like every little tiny little thing right. And I felt it was really unhealthy for her to be there that late. It was unhealthy for like all the unhealthy normal life reasons, right? Like get out of the office, nobody's there, you're walking home in the dark, like all that stuff. Like um, it's not healthy to just be chained to your desk. It was also unhealthy because she was applying some pressure that nobody else was giving to her. I was her manager, and I certainly wasn't begging her to stay till 8, not for an email newsletter, that's for sure. But I remember she wasn't opening up. Like she wasn't having a place where she could have a conversation with a peer. And I remember bringing her down to another level in our offices and just being like, where does that come from? Now, she did sit kitty corner from the founder, right? And the founder was going to be retiring soon. And maybe the founder had conversations with her that I wasn't aware of, right? She worked there longer before I did. But the point is, she needed to have that conversation with me because at some point it meant an exit for her. I didn't push her out, don't worry. But it meant that she realized she couldn't just keep going on the way that she was going. But where was she going to get that conversation? She had just lost a boss she had for a long time. I was a new girl coming in. I was still like trying to find my desk and like find the bathroom key. I swear, like I was like trying to get my bearings in this awful, awful place. I didn't know it was that awful till I got there. But like, who did she have? She had kitty corner founder office desk. That wasn't going to cut it for her, not at all. She needed to be able to talk with somebody about it. So she probably should have went to like HR, but maybe HR, I remember at the time, might have been a little wonky too. So is there somebody you can talk out loud? So Kristen says she's a talk out loud person. And then going to therapy is helped. And then having a mentor from SCORE. Yes, mentor from SCORE. That's really, really good, right? So somebody you can just talk it out with, because maybe the angle you're coming at it from, working till 8 p.m. on an email newsletter, that's not resulting in sales. Like maybe you need to talk with somebody else. Because if she could have said like, oh, I realize this isn't reaching our goals, so maybe I don't have to be there till 8 on this, but I could reach the goals a different way and be home by 4 or 5 p.m. So I just think she couldn't see it. She felt like she just had to keep doing these transactional things. So who can you talk to that would give you a few steps back and say like, I think you're on the wrong track and you mean well. So think about that as an entrepreneur. How many times do we just like get in the motion of like, okay, but this is going to get me to that goal. Is it? Okay. The next one, let me cover my last one. This one's one of my favorites. I'd like to say it comes naturally to me, but no, I think I've been working on boundaries and creating them. And yes, did I draw you a little box for them? I sure did. I drew you a box. Know your boundaries. So when you're up against something, the pressure of a big goal, maybe you're up against a new product. Like I keep going back to new product launch because I have 1 or 2 people in mind that they keep on trying to work through something product related, us included, by the way. And sometimes you forget scope. Worse, sometimes your client forgets scope, right? And so you have to come back every once in a while, even when you don't want to, even if we feel like, oh, I'm going to be nitpicky if I come back to the boundaries, like if I come back and say, hey, that's my lane. There are plenty of things that I do in marketing for a client that are very, very transactional, right? It's move this lever, change this knob, like do the thing, duplicate the what you call it, right? And I do mean what you call it. But in doing so, I have to remember, what did we say we were doing? I have had plenty of clients who can run after their sales goals and they just like run through and churn through calls and leads and make the messages, whatever they need to do. But I have just as many that are like, ooh, doing sales is hard. It makes me feel like I'm chasing people and I don't really like that feeling. And I don't want to, right? And there's a lot of that. And I always know that right there, while I can cheerlead them on the best way that I can, and certainly on a video like this, I'm not going to be able to forever cheerlead them on to make the calls. I can overwhelm them with leads in a good way, right? Kristen knows I like to make operations sweat. That's for sure. But I know that that's nothing I can do about that. So like I have to remember, got it. You're feeling this way. It's hard. But I'm going to still get back to doing what you need, which is this, this, and this. Because if I slow down every single time someone's like, oh, I don't love it, that comes right back on me, right? Then I start to feel this pressure that I can't do anything about that right then. Except I can get on here and be like, you should call your leads back. You really should. And sidebar, you should. If you're not calling leads back, you should. Number one, you paid for them, blood, sweat, tears, or dollars to get them, call them. So if you're on the fence about that, just call them. And just remember that you can set boundaries. One of my previous toolkit videos, I talk all about it being 3 times 3 ways. At least do it 3 times 3 ways so that you can be done at 9. Just know that, well, Nicole gave me permission to be done after 9. Now, not all of you get to 9. I get that. I want to get to 9. I always want to get to 6 or 7 because by 6 or 7, people are like, man, that girl will not stop. Nope. But I probably will stop closer to 9. So if they gave up on me or they just give me the 40 minutes of their time, they would have, you know, earlier on, they wouldn't have got so many messages, but usually happens around number 6 or 7. So find the boundaries, stick to the boundaries, remind yourself of the boundaries. We're not all great at it, right? Yeah. So, okay. So, hey, Angie, I'm glad you're here. So, because we're not all great at it, we've got to have some way to remind ourselves. How do we do that? Invoicing is great. You have an invoice? I had to do this myself. Okay. Truth be told, I felt like something was a slippery slope recently. And I was like, why does it keep feeling like this is scope creep? That's what we use in nonprofit language. I used to support a lot of nonprofit organizations and with my work and with events, and we would use that term a lot, like, oh, it feels like scope creep if you're not taking care of the puppies or babies and you're doing something else outside of the nonprofit mission, right? Well, the same thing happens here, right? It's really easy for something to like slip outside. And I remember feeling that feeling, and I was like, wait a second. So get back to your boundaries. So that only happens if you create them ahead of time. Create the box ahead of time. I didn't draw the box after, right? Like I drew the box, squeezed in the word boundary. See how I squeezed that in? So get back to where you can just remind yourself of that. And it doesn't feel great when you have to. He's getting louder, is he not? Anyway, so find a way that you can hold the line. Why? Because the pressure that you're feeling needs it. Okay, let's get to the last one. I didn't say let it go. I said let it fly. Whatever pressure you're feeling is building up and means to me there probably is something even bigger than the thing you're working on. Whatever you're feeling that you're like, this printer is not getting my things ready fast enough, or I'm not hearing an answer back on X, or I need to, it's not let it go. It's not, what is this? What is it? Relax and recharge. No, that's not the way. No, I'm guessing, at least for me, what works for me is it's a signal that there's something else, right? That there's something more, something bigger. So whatever it is that you can let fly or have a conversation, don't pre-plan your conversations. That's a topic for another day. But when you can, just say, I don't let this fly. So you're feeling pressure of, let's be real, okay? Entrepreneurs, we feel it on the workforce. We feel it in the sales realm, right? We feel it in our relationships at home. We can feel pressure, the news, which I ignore that these days, but you feel it so many different ways, like what could impact your business. And I'm going to tell you, don't let it go, relax and recharge. I'm going to tell you, lean into that pressure and let it fly. What else could that pressure propel you into? You have to pre-plan your conversations, Kristen. Oh, I'm telling you, there's magic when you don't. I mean, have a plan that you're going to like talk about X, but when you have your sub points ready to go, I've learned, I did go through a course actually that was not the courses we know today, but years back. And it was so freeing to go through it and just to, it changed how I approach them. So I do highly recommend it. Anyway, but I really, really instead, that pressure is not going to go away until you put it into something, right? It's not like that elephant on your chest, in the middle of your shoulders or your lower back, that feeling, right? Like we want that lifted off of us. Sometimes it's how do we make the pressure fly away from us? How many times have you felt the urgency or pressure around something, or the need to control something even tighter? The need to like, oh, I want it done my way, this way, because I like it the way I like it. And you found that something did flip. Something, your attitude, or somebody said something because you talked it out, something happened, and maybe you let that thing out into the wild, right? Maybe you let the product go imperfectly, right? Like I've done workshops that were not perfect on the back end. Maybe I cleaned up something, right? But I let them go. We did a workshop this year, Wow and Win is what we called it. And afterwards I was like, that was the worst name. Why did we name it that? And so now we need to go back in and we just like need to change that one little piece. But it was more important that I was able to give my clients, my students in that workshop what they needed so it could just go. So how many times have you ever like been like, wow, and you felt that just lifted, right? Most because you, yeah, and because you're right. You are right, Kristen. You are right. Man, if everybody else would just see it. But until you rule the world, until, or by Twitter. No, even then, no, that doesn't actually work. We've seen someone trying that. So yeah, so how can you let it fly? So I don't want you to do what you could track what makes you upset, I guess. Thanks, Google. I don't need a diary of what makes me stressed out and upset. Okay, but I guess you could, to identify what really is the problem. And you could try to relax. So funny. And you could just take time away from the thing, and maybe that would help. Certainly a good night's sleep always helps me. But instead, if you could just make a plan to talk with somebody. Kristen gave really good examples. I love that. To me, it's anybody that has some business sense that could talk to you, right? It could be a mentor. It could be somebody outside. I don't always think it's good peer to peer necessarily, like in your business, but you could find another entrepreneur that you could talk to. And they will be somebody that will be so interested in everything about your business that you might talk lots of things out, right? But then find a way that you can stick to those boundaries. Is there a way that you can identify the scope of a relationship? Maybe that's an invoice for you, like the example I gave. Maybe that is, I only spend this much time on this project. Like that's all it has. That's all I have. A mentor of mine used to say when engaging with photos or posts on social media, she puts on a really long 9 or 10 minute song, and that's all she has for the day, right? Like she has those 9 or 10 minutes as that song plays. She makes all the relationships she can possibly make in that time, and then she has to be done with it. And she teaches social media work. So like if she does that, then we could do that too. We could set a few more timers. And then finally, don't let it go. Let it fly. How can you use that pressure to propel that thing out of your life or something else forward? One of your go-tos, what is Girl Scout cookies? Yes, they do help. Just thinking about Girl Scout cookies, I found Rachel recently told me to go get one, and I was like, great idea. And then I walked away and I completely forgot about it. But just like thinking about it was like, hey, that's a really good idea. So yeah, these are some of the things that I do. Yeah, could you go to the gym? Sure. Yeah, could you just like push harder on the sales goal? I guess. I don't think that's it. I think it's finding a way to let it fly, use that motivation for something else, because I find on the other side, the other thing either comes together or it doesn't. Your amount of feeling or back pressure, it comes together or it doesn't. This isn't as techy as the tools and tips I usually give to grow your business, but I'm going to tell you, I think a lot of people are feeling lots of pressure right now. Rachel tells me it's true, and the entrepreneur she talks to. I'm feeling it's true because I see so many people like hesitating and not making, the move that they want to make right now in their business for lots of really good reasons. Some excuses, some are really good reasons. But I think collectively together, I shared with Kristen today that like we could just like Red Rover this kind of thing, right? And just think like, okay, we're all together, we're gonna take some steps forward. I think you'd find that this might be one of the toolkits that grows your business in a completely different way. So tell me if this was helpful. I only know when you do tell me. Tell me if you listen to the podcast, because this one is a great one. It is of the guy, Will Russell, Launch in 5. He and I geek out about marketing, and Matt on the call is quiet. And then all of a sudden he's like, hey, I just learned something. So I think you might get a kick out of that portion. We certainly cover everything about when we're feeling this pressure and how we have to settle into it. So let me know how it is. Thank you, Kristen, for tagging your friend Lynn. Hey, Lynn, tell me if you're here on a replay. I look forward to talking to you soon. As always, if there's something that I can help and share with you on a toolkit video like this, message me in the comments or DM me, and I'll be back next week to share it. I'll talk to you soon.